Hello, this is Michael Kajowski. Newspaper journalism, also called print journalism, can be used in ESL, EFL classes in foreign countries, even in oral English. So here's an example, a copy of that I made of something from a textbook, American class in social studies. The title, How to Write a Newspaper Article. People read newspaper articles to find out what's going on. A person can write a high quality article by following several steps. The first step, choose a topic that people want to read about or need to know. Some examples are current events, community issues, and sports news. Step two, get the facts. Ask the questions who, what, where, when, and how. Find eyewitnesses or experts and interview them. Write down their words specifically in detail so that they can be quoted in the story. Cover both sides of an issue. For example, should an old house be demolished to make room for a new playground, or should it be repaired and used as a new museum? Step three, organize the material, decide what's important. A story about a baseball game would tell which teams played, where they played, who won, and what the final score was. Interviews with coaches, highlights of the game, and quotations from fans would add more interest. Step four, write your first draft. Start with a topic or summary sentence that sums up the main idea of the story. Then fill it in with details, including quotations for interviews. And finally, revise and edit. Read the story aloud to make sure that it makes sense and to summarize. Hello, this is Michael Kajowski. Today I'm going to read the one newspaper article that I published when I was in high school. I was in high school from 1972 until I graduated in the summer of 1976. This was our high school newspaper. Uh, I believe it was called the Nicolay Knights page. I went to Nicolay High School in Glendale, Wisconsin. This article that I'm going to read was published on December 20th, 1974, in Knights Page, our high school newspaper. And today, here in Shenzhen, China, is May 11th, 2023. This article was placed on the back page. I was not a regular writer for the school newspaper. By the way, I was on the forensics team for 3 years, sophomore, junior, and senior, and I did original oratory. I was not involved in any varsity sports. I was also a volunteer at my church, where I was a volunteer director of the Acolytes in high school for 2 years at the Fox Point Lutheran Church in the 1970s. The title of my article here is called, with the headline they put on it is Rickles, Is He Really Funny? That refers, of course, to the famous comedian Don Rickles, who's deceased at this point. So Rickles, Is He Really Funny? Insulting Machine. As I entered the F Wing library, I was welcomed by a group of friends huddled around a large table. They greeted me warmly with such questions as, Who let you in? Ha ha ha, that's sort of a joke. And when did you escape from the ranch? One student, referring to my red plaid shirt, asked if someone would get the checkers since I already brought the board. If I would have worn a t shirt, the line would have been, "What factory are you working at after school?" Trying to ignore this humiliating display, I hoped to quietly slither away, but it was too late. I had already been quote unquote squared. This scene is typical of a new type of humor that has spread throughout Nicolet, a Don Rickles craze that has turned wholesome students into nightclub entertainers. Junior Mark Bristol, who occasionally imitates Rickles, is going to Las Vegas to see him for the second time. "I think his jokes are so funny that I use them," said Mark. "The majority of students think his routine is funny and that he's the best insulter. When I use his jokes, I'm just kidding around and trying to have a good time. I never try to hurt anyone." Mark also said that he watches Rickles on The Tonight Show and memorizes some of his good jokes. According to Junior Gary Taxman, students admire Rickles and his style of humor. "Students imitate him," explained Gary, "because they're not able to express themselves, so they use someone else's humor. I just ignore it because it doesn't affect me, and it's up to them how they want to act." Junior Dave Wade said, "When you have a model like Rickles, you tend to make your jokes like his rather than like your own." "I recorded Don Rickles once or twice when he was host of The Tonight Show," said Junior Scott Bronson. "He's popular at Nicolet, but a lot of people are being turned off by his constant derogatory remarks about different ethnic groups. I think that only a small minority of boys are involved in imitating Rickles, and they do it because they think they can get attention." Mrs. Edel Scheibler, an F-wing librarian, said that she hasn't noticed a student trend toward using Rickles jokes. "It depends on the mood of the day," said Mrs. Scheibler. "Although there haven't been any severe problems, sometimes students kid around and I have to ask them to quiet down." That was in quotation marks. Junior Paul Gondek said that while some students imitate Rickles, most just have a natural habit of using popular Rickles phrases or jokes that they have seen on TV or heard from other students. Paul pointed out that, quote, "kids like copying his style of hacking and cutting down," unquote. Although most students interviewed said they felt the student body was aware of the growing popularity and usage of Rickles jokes, senior Mike Shanovich, along with others, disagreed. Quote, "I don't like his act," unquote, stated Mike. "I don't think he's popular at Nicolet, and I've never heard his jokes done by any students." Karen Marcus, a junior, said she had never heard anybody talk about him. Quote, "how people can like him so much, I'll never understand. When I see students imitating Rickles, I walk away because I've heard all the jokes before," added junior Scott McFadden. "It changes some people's personalities from bad to worse." He's popular among students because of his sarcastic style of humor. He's the kind of comedian that a high school student would like, explained junior Jack Quinlevitt. Another person jokingly said, "I like him because he's got a dynamite personality and a bald head." Unfortunately, Rickles wasn't present to return the insult. He reportedly had to return to the home when he was found walking around with his robe open. Squared, Don, you hockey puck.
This is Michael Kajowski, an ESL EFL teacher. I have been in China and South Korea.
A lot of people ask me, how do you throw away a plate full of peanut shells, especially if you're sitting on a bar stool? Well, the first thing you do, this is how you do this. You look the word peanut up in a foreign Chinese dictionary, and it's peanuts, wa sheng, wa sheng, wa sheng. The next thing you do, you film the peanuts, you open the garbage bag, and you throw them in the garbage bag, like this. And now you just threw your peanut shells away, and you wipe the crumbs off your shirt, and you're done. Voila. Oh, this is Michael Kajowski. This is English as a foreign language. As I mentioned, I've taught in China and South Korea. Today is August 11th, 2022, a Thursday. I'm located here in Houston today. This is a model conversation from Learning English, and it shows students how to hold a conversation in the foreign language. I'll start off with the script with the two people talking are David and Beth, and they're at a social gathering for an international club. David, hello, I'm David Garza. I'm a new member. Beth, hi, my name is Elizabeth Silva, but please call me Beth. David, okay, where are you from, Beth? Beth, Brazil. How about you? David, I'm from Mexico. Beth, oh, I love Mexico. It's really beautiful. David, thanks. So is Brazil. Beth, oh, good. Sun He is here. David, who is Sun He? Beth, she's my classmate. We're in the same math class. David, where is she from? Beth, South Korea. Let's go and say hello. Sorry, what's your last name again? Garcia? David, actually, it's Garza. Beth, how do you spell that? David, capital Garza. Garza. Okay, that's a brief conversation where they're at a little social gathering. And then you can use that as a form of dictation, also rehearsal or choral rehearsal. If you're in a group, you can use that to model and practice spoken English. You can also try to match the comments, match the questions with the answers. And also for basic introductory tourist English and basic spelling and grammar. There are some questions in there. What's your name again? Uh, what do you call Silva was the name. What should I call you? Elizabeth Silva. And how do you spell your last name? Silva was one of them. Introduce yourself to a group. Use the expressions above, and make a list of names for your group. Hi, I'm Noriko Noguchi. I'm sorry. What's your last name again? Noguchi. That's an example. Hello, this is Michael. How are you today? People have asked me, how do you boil noodles? Well, the first thing you want to do, you want to make sure that your garbage disposal does not work in order to make certain that your sink and your kitchen are both filthy. So you double check it, it doesn't work. The next thing you do, you put water in a pot over your filthy sink. Now you've got your water. Then you take 1 second to look at the directions, which you probably need to know. Then you've been preheating your range tap over here. Make sure you don't burn your hand off your arm. You put that on the range tap, and now you're ready to go. And in only about 5 or 10 minutes, you'll have fresh noodles. Hello, this is Michael Kajowski. Thanks for paying close attention to this. I do have my first YouTube channel at Michael Kajowski. Today is Saturday, August 27th, 2022, and a one way of practicing English, if you speak a foreign language such as Spanish or Chinese, is to go very slowly, pronouncing each syllable and knowing the different pronunciations of each vowel within each syllable. So now along those lines, I'd like to just read a couple pages to you. You can practice stuff like this in your house without a lot of fanfare. I'd like to read one page from a story by a classic American writer from the 19th century, Edgar Allan Poe. This is from a story he wrote called Some Words with a Mummy. You would think it might be easier to learn a foreign language than it would be to try to talk to a mummy. I don't know exactly what language mummies speak. Here they mentioned Egypt and Egyptian. I would also like to read one page from a book I self-published in January of 2015. This one is called After Dark by Michael Kujawski, a suspense novel. So let me get started here with Edgar Allan Poe, Tales of Mystery and Imagination. And this is called a collection in English, Wordsworth Classics. This one was published in 1993 by Wordsworth Editions Limited in Great Britain. So here's what it looks like. A collection of classic stories by a very famous American writer everyone knows, Edgar Allan Poe. Now, how would you pronounce that? E can be pronounced E, but it can also be pronounced as in this case, and D is D. Edgar Allan Poe. And by the way, O can be pronounced a long O, or a short O, In this case, a long O, Poe. Edgar Allan Poe. All right, I want to read page 406, and it spills over a little onto 405 and 407. Some Words with a Mummy. And by the way, I'm in Houston, Texas today. And upon my word, I am at a loss to know how or why it was that we pursued neither the one nor the other. But perhaps the true reason is to be sought in the spirit of the age, which proceeds by the rule of contraries altogether, and is now usually admitted as the solution of everything in the way of paradox and impossibility. Or perhaps, after all, it was only the mummy's exceedingly natural and matter of course air that divested his words, that means the mummy's words, and I still don't know what language mummies speak. Do mummies speak in Chinese? I don't know. Divested his words of the terrible. However this may be, the facts are clear, and no member of our party betrayed any very particular trepidation or seemed to consider that anything had gone very especially wrong. There is one word in there, trepidation, a long word that means nervousness, fear, trepidation. Whenever we slow things down, learning a foreign language, it's easier for everyone to learn it and pick up the pace. Trepidation. Trepidation. That means fear and nervousness. I'll continue reading. This is a way of practicing with your throat, your mouth, your tongue, and your whole face. For my part, I was convinced it was all right and merely stepped aside out of the range of the Egyptian's fist. Dr. Panamer thrust his hands into his breeches pockets, looked hard at the mummy, and grew excessively red in the face. That meant he was embarrassed. Mr. Glidden stroked his whiskers and drew up the collar of his shirt. Mr. Buckingham, well, that sounds like a British name. Mr. Buckingham hung down his head, and put his right thumb into the left corner of his mouth. Well, you'd hang down your head, you take your right thumb, and you put it in the left corner, left of your mouth. That reminds me of a common Americanism of a small infant or toddler sucking his thumb. That's called sucking your thumb, like this. You take your thumb, you're 3 years old, 1 year old, and you suck your thumb. The Egyptian regarded him with a severe countenance for some minutes, and at length, with a sneer, said, dash, "Why don't you speak, Mr. Buckingham? Did you hear what I asked you or not? Do take your thumb out of your mouth." Mr. Buckingham hereupon gave a slight start, took his right thumb out of the left corner of his mouth, and by way of indemnification, inserted his left thumb in the right corner of the aperture above mentioned. Not being able to get an answer from Mr. B, Mr. B refers to Mr. Buckingham. That is called shorthand. It just took the first letter from Buckingham's name. Buckingham is spelled Buckingham. Such a long name back in Old England, and Edgar Allan Poe, the original writer, just shortened it to Mr. B. The figure turned peevishly to Mr. Glidden, and in a peremptory tone demanded in general terms what we all meant. Mr. Glidden replied at great length in phonetics. There's a 3-syllable word, pho-ne-tics. 3 syllables, pho-ne-tics. Phonetics. Phonetics. And but for the deficiency of American printing offices in hieroglyphical type, it would afford me much pleasure to record here, in the original, the whole of his very excellent speech. I may as well take this occasion to remark that all the subsequent conversation in which the mummy took a part was carried on in primitive Egyptian. Well, now we know. What language did the mummy speak? If you ask a question, you might raise your hands. What language did the mummy speak? It says here on page 406 of Tales of Mystery and Imagination, a collection. It says Egyptian, Egyptian. What language did the mummy speak? Primitive Egyptian, also called Egyptian. Then spilling over onto page 407, through the medium, parentheses, so far as concerned myself and other untraveled members of the company, through the medium, I say, of Messrs. Glidden and Buckingham as interpreters. Well, there's something. If you're gifted enough, smart enough to learn a foreign language, then you won't need an interpreter. Unfortunately, myself and almost everyone every place needs the interpreters that are available on the internet and the electronic devices with interpretation and interpreter apps that I've seen available in China in bookstores. Okay, so this was a famous American writer, Edgar Allan Poe. My name, by the way, is Michael Kajowski. I have taught English, ESL, EFL, in full classroom English to all the different age levels, university, high school, and children, in first in Korea and then in China. I do have 170 hours of TEFL, teaching English as a foreign language, and TESOL, teaching English to speakers of other languages. I have 170 hours of TEFL and TESOL certificates. My name, by the way, is also 3 syllables. It is difficult to pronounce. Ku Jiao Ski. And the first name is Michael, Michael. Okay, now I'm going to read a page here from this trade paperback, also called a self-published book, because I published it myself, because no one would pay me to publish it, and I wrote it. I published this in January of 2015. It's called After Dark, a 200 or 396 page suspense novel that I wrote. And on the cover it says After Dark, Michael Kajowski, A World Full of Life and Sorrow. And it shows a dark picture of some pine needles in a forest. I self-published this through a self-publishing company called BookLocker.com. And now I would like to turn to page I turn to page 226 and 227. I'm going to read page 227 in After Dark by Michael Kajowski. Do you suspect a practical joker at the Observer? That's a newspaper, a fictitious newspaper, I made that up, in a fictitious town called Kirkville. Do you suspect a practical joker at the Observer is responsible for the junk mail and prank call? No, Mark answered, recalling the typically sober atmosphere inside the newsroom. One day a mailman delivers postal mail in the United States, like letters, paper, like this, to a mailed box to a U.S. resident. One day the mailman or someone else stuffed 20 pieces of mail, most of it pamphlets, into my mailbox. I drove to the postal station on Main Street and in a state of hostility asked, "What's the meaning of this?" After I calmed down, the postal clerk advised me to have my name and address removed from junk mail advertising lists. In order to mail a paper letter in the United States, it has to have an address, which is the place where the letter goes, also called a destination. So the mailman knows where to deliver your mail. It has your name. If someone were mailing to me, my name, Michael Kajowski, on the letter or package, then my address, which is numbers and the name of the street, similar to China and other foreign countries, and then the city, and then the postal code. What's the meaning of this? After I calmed down, the postal clerk advised me to have my name and address removed from junk mail advertising lists. Junk mail is a form of advertising in the United States You can get it in the spam section of your computer tube or in your mailbox at your house out on the street. Junk mail is advertising. It's stuff people did not ask for, but they got. And sometimes you can go shopping on the internet or through the mail and you buy items off junk mail. I refused. I said I shop through the mail and over the internet. I make purchases from advertising pamphlets and email I receive. It was just that. Well, some of the mail, when there was too much mail, piled up in desk drawers and cardboard boxes around my house. It's a nuisance that distracts from the taciturn side of my writing work, but it's the way I live. In May, Mark had mentioned this matter to Deputy Brinkman. Mark told Reggie that he was struggling against an onslaught of junk mail. That meant there was a colossal amount of junk mail, a giant amount, a lot of junk mail, a big amount of junk mail. Reggie suggested that he should throw away the pile of junk mail. You know, a pile goes up and up and up. You keep making piles of books, piles of letters, and suddenly you've got piles all over your house. Piles of pillows, piles of food, piles of clothing. P-I-L-E. The I is pronounced a long I. I can also be pronounced as a short I. If it were P-I-L-L, it would be pronounced pill, short I. But since there's an E at the end of pile, P-I-L-E, that means to pronounce a long I. P-I-L-E. The E is silent and not pronounced. P-I-L-E. Pile. Pile. One syllable. In May, Mark had mentioned this matter to Deputy Brinkman. Mark told Reggie that he was struggling against an onslaught of junk mail. Reggie suggested that he should throw away the pile of junk mail and delete everything from his spam folder every day. Well, that's something that I like to do, and so do a lot of people, to go into your computer, email, and delete whole folders, especially the spam folder. Mark did just that. He stopped signing up for internet alerts and newsletters. He collected fewer pamphlets. He hadn't even mentioned the junk mail to Adrian until several months ago. Last summer, Mark also informed a neighbor he'd involuntarily received animal rights literature, even though he did not normally write about animal rights issues. As Mark recalled, he had received the animal rights advertising for several years before the emails and pamphlets mysteriously ended on their own. So this animal rights literature, also called pamphlets, were defending the legal rights, the entitlements of pets in the United States, animals, pet dogs, pet cats. A dog goes ruff, 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 and a cat goes meow, meow, meow. And pets in America have legal rights. Okay, well, I suggested this, reading books aloud, like After Dark by Michael Kojowski, and Edgar Allan Poe, his collection of short stories, in this case called Tales of Mystery and Imagination. I suggest reading them out loud to get exercise with your lips, your teeth, your mouth, your throat, and then you feel more confident talking to people in a foreign language. I did this when I was in high school. I was on the forensics team for 3 years when I was in high school as a like my second year of high school, my third year, and my fourth year, called sophomore, junior, senior. For 3 years, I was on the forensics team, and I gave an original speech, usually 8 minutes, sometimes 4 minutes. And I would practice by going in my house and reading Edgar Allan Poe out loud, a famous classics author from the 1800s, also called the 19th century in the United States. Well, I want to thank you for letting me get some more practice. Now it's on YouTube, and for letting me tell you that. Now, my next challenge is to send something like this to China, where I taught in the classroom, or to South Korea, or to Mexico, or to any country where English, while it is a universal language, where it's not the primary language. China is Chinese, and I think Mexico is Spanish. So, have a nice day. Hello, this is Michael. You know, a lot of people ask me, have you ever been national? Nope, never. I've never been in any job school, job interview, or abilities test which has determined that I have national talent or national potential at anything. When I grew up in the 1960s and 1970s, this was a colossal, relevant question facing our generation. In terms of skills and abilities assessments by schools and employers, I'm typically 90 in math, 87 in overall English, and 83 in general science. Specifically, my reading comprehension is at 83, and the creative writing component of my overall English skills is 90. The average range in any subject is 75 to 80. Oh, this is Michael. There is a rocket from the Kennedy Space Center that just went up. I just noticed it. I was just looking out my window here at this rest area in Brevard County. This has happened to me many times. I just, look up and there's something going on up there. And I think today is Saturday, approximately October 8th, 2022. It looks like they just shot something up. A lot of times they send unmanned rockets up to deposit satellites in outer space. So I was just looking at my car window here. It's about 7:11 in the evening, and I just saw that up there. Unfortunately, I didn't turn my camera on during. It was very visible at. This is sundown here at dusk. It's not so visible right now. The thing over to the left there is the actual rocket going into space. I see by those clouds there that contrail that it left, the gases that it appeared visually it looked like it was going horizontally or sideways for a short time. Now it's disappeared into the atmosphere. From this vantage point, it appears to be flying over the Atlantic Ocean. I can still see it with my eyes, but this Android phone camera probably can't pick it up anymore. It appears to be well over the ocean and headed that way. It seemed like it was going horizontally a lot, not real heavily vertically up into space. Most of the other ones go faster, they just go up into space. If you look down a little, the moon is just coming over the tree line, at this. This is along one of the interstate freeways, a north-south one that goes all the way down to Miami and to Key West, and all the way up north in Florida up to Jacksonville. Um, so this is that interstate freeway that runs from Jacksonville all the way down to the Miami area and then into a highway freeway that goes all the way down to Key West. So I don't see it anymore with my eyesight there. You do see that trail there that it's left. And it's too bad I didn't turn this on just a little earlier. I had a much better shot of it. It was very bright and glowing as it took off here at dusk. As that moon rises over there, um, to the naked eye, it's very visible. You can see the dark craters on it, and its silhouette is very well defined right now, just barely hanging over the upper lip of the tree line. Okay, this video here is at approximately 3.5 minutes. I'm going to stop it. Hello, thanks for watching YouTube. This is Michael Kajowski at ESL After Dark. Also, the 396-page suspense novel available at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, uh, BookLocker.com, and other websites. After Dark by Michael Kajowski, a suspense novel, 2015. This, what I'm going to read here is a feature story that I wrote for journalism school. I graduated from the UW-Madison School of Journalism in 1980. This is from April 9th, 1980. It's about a arcade game called Space Invaders. It's a miniature gold mine revealed by the gleam in the eyes of some of Madison's bar and restaurant owners and their employees. The owners won't say how much money it makes and probably don't know how many customers it attracts, but they and their employees have been astonished by its popularity. The first week that we got the deluxe Space Invaders game, the coin box was so full of money that no more quarters could fit into it. Michael St. John, a bartender at the pub, 522 State Street, said. He described it as the most popular game in the world and said that entrepreneurs probably make a fortune off it. Old people, young people, attorneys, and professors stand in line for it, Thomas Myers said. Myers, who worked at the Brat House, 603 State Street, for about 1 year, also said that he once saw an older man put down 8 quarters on the game, indicating that he wanted to reserve 8 consecutive games. At the Wizard of Oz game room in the University Square Mall, middle-aged adults, college students, and children stand in line for up to 15 minutes, peering over shoulders while nervously waiting for the chance to pay a quarter and play one game of Space Invaders, the chance to fire their lasers and save the imaginary planet, parentheses, and perhaps their egos, from the attacking green gremlins who threaten to end the game. The game itself is housed in a plastic structure about the size of a filing cabinet. It has grisly purple monsters painted on its sides and a television screen in its belly. When a quarter is deposited, 50 tiny green figures appear, firing lasers while inching toward a cratered planet. The player tries to defend himself and the planet as long as possible with 3 to 5 laser-equipped flying saucers. If he kills all 50, then 50 more appear and so on until he is finally destroyed. According to John Christensen, a bartender at the Bear's Den, 321 North Francis Street, some people go there to play the game because they don't have to wait in line like at the plaza or the pub. Some people come just to play. They put out 4 quarters and don't even buy a drink. Godfather's, a restaurant at the corner of Park Street and University Avenue, has 3 electronic games. Space Invaders is by far the most popular of the three, said employee Richard Dumas. He added that some people come into the restaurant just to play the game and buy food or drinks so they can stay. The owner of the Bears Den, Samuel Gerasi, said, "It's the most popular game besides pool and makes more money than pinball games." When asked how much money it makes, Gerasi just laughed, refusing to say. Waiters, waitresses, and bartenders at various businesses say that the game is leased from distributors and that the owners and distributors split the income 50-50. Some estimated that each machine takes in between $30 and $50 per day, depending on the popularity of the bar, restaurant, or game room. Using the $30 figure, that would amount to an annual income of almost $11,000 for each machine, leaving the owners with about one half of that. In Madison, the two major distributors of Space Invaders are Creative Profits Distributors, 1960 Atwood Avenue, and Modern Specialty Company Incorporated, 405 North Broome Street. Terry Volk of Creative Profits said that the game was in greater demand 1 year ago than it is now, and that they have located 48 Space Invaders games in Madison. He also said that in Japan, where the game was invented, about 250,000 have been leased. Unlike the upright version in most Madison businesses, the Japanese Space Invaders television screen is horizontally housed in a glass cocktail table. According to Alan Zacharias of Midwest Specialties, Space Invaders is still the hottest game around, but a new electronic game called Asteroids is becoming just as popular. Volk said that there is no waiting list for those wishing to lease the game. Zacharias said there is a 2 to 3 week wait, and St. John of the pub said there is a 5 to 6 month delay because the game is so popular. Apparently the game isn't sold on home video cassettes yet, although there is speculation that it will be. A friend of mine has one at home, Myers said. It's an amazing game because it's the best of the electronic space-age games. It's more fun than Breakout, another popular electronic game. Virtually everyone who plays it regularly knows their high score, points are scored for killing invaders, and describes the game as addicting. "I didn't play it until I started working at the Bears Den," said Christensen, whose high score is 5,580, better than average. "It requires skill and knowledge," he said. According to Dumas, it's popular because it's the only game that requires a developed skill. There's always room for improvement. Your skill determines how long you'll play and whether or not you'll get your money's worth, said Dumas, an engineering student. "Several regulars come in here, the pub, buy only one Pepsi and spend $2 to $4 on Space Invaders every day," St. John said. "I think the attraction is the kill or be killed challenge. It's the only game that attacks you," he said. "I'm shaking after I've played 3 or 4 games in a row." People have been known to come in here and not do anything except exchange dollars for quarters to play Space Invaders, said Norman Hansen, a bartender at the Wisconsin Club, 704 University Avenue. He also said that he once spent $3 on the game in 7 hours. "You don't have to spend more quarters if you get good at it," said Craig Prothero while waiting in line at the Wizard of Oz game room. "Like other games, there are winners and losers in Space Invaders. The good losers get to play longer and take more invaders with them when they finally go down, but the bad losers are immediately humiliated and killed. Who wins? The person who totes all those quarters to the bank is a likely suspect." This is Michael, ESL After Dark. Those noodles are really boiling very well. They're hot, and so they're really cooking. I'm going to take them off here now, and it's probably about 5 minutes. It's elbow macaroni that can go in something like that. That is a bowl of soup. Or in cheese, of course, cheese macaroni. Now I've taken the elbow macaroni off there, and I've got it simmering. So the next thing you do is you use your spatula to clear the water out of there and drain it a little into the sink. I'm going to cut corners here and just go a little fast and pour some of the water out without pouring the elbow macaroni out, which will taste good. Hello, this is Michael at ESL After Dark. I'm not in China at the moment teaching English. I'm in Florida in USA. You know, a lot of people ask me when you're traveling in your car, how do you brush your teeth? Well, you take a toothbrush like this, you dip it in your cup of water, and you brush your teeth. Like that. And then what you do, you pick up your cup of water, and instead of spitting it out in the parking lot, you swallow it. You swish it around in your mouth and you swallow your cup of water. And now you have clean, healthy teeth that are not rotting into oblivion. Hi, this is Michael Kajowski for Oral English, also called Conversational English. This is a dialogue, a conversation between Anne and Alex. And this is a way of practicing English, English pronunciation, and also modeling English. Anne, what did you think of that short story we just read in the American literature class? Alex, The Interlopers by Saki. Yeah, that's the one. Alex, I think some of the plot developments in the dark woods created a mood of mystery and sadness. However, the plot was difficult for me to follow. It's too bad the two main characters didn't put aside their long-standing feud over land ownership until a tree fell on them and they were trapped. And I know what you mean. These old English stories from decades in the past are difficult for American high school students to understand, let alone students learning a foreign language. They're well-written stories, they've been published for decades, but those long sentences in Old English don't have the immediate impact of a modern novel. Alex, I agree with you. The school customarily assigns well-known short stories because they're widely read around the world and already in print. Compared to a 500-page best-selling novel, short stories and essays are faster reading. And I can imagine so many international authors publish books nowadays that there is not enough room for them in the school library. Alex, I guess that's why we have that huge textbook covering American literature. And yeah, and another reason for the course textbook is so we can sample a variety of writers. Alex, that's true. There are dozens of classics in American literature, everything from the essays of Ralph Waldo Emerson to Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn. And what authors do you read? Alex, well, in terms of mystery and horror classics, I like Edgar Allan Poe's short fiction. Poe is sometimes credited with inventing detective fiction, as well as the art of writing short stories, essays, and literary reviews. And in stories like Poe's The Cask of Amontillado and The Telltale Heart are scary and haunting. The murderers in Poe's stories are bent on getting revenge. Alex, in The Cask of Amontillado, Montresor walls up Fortunato in his family's underground tombs, more or less burying Fortunato alive. And that's a gruesome ending, but the extreme injustice in great literary classics is probably one of the biggest reasons they've been popular for decades. Alex, I think so too.
Good actually.
Yeah, it is good. Hello, this is Michael Kujawski, an American English foreign language teacher. I've been in China and South Korea for several years. This is the modeling of spoken English, also called oral English, of a fictitious dialogue between Frank and Tom, and there are two people talking about how should news be reported. Frank, hi Tom, how are you today? Tom, okay. Frank, I really enjoyed the story you wrote for the newspaper last week. That was good journalism. Tom, thanks. It's nice to get some positive feedback in the face of all the controversies in the news media. Frank, your story was thorough and objective. Unfortunately, I can't say the same thing for all the other criticism and controversy in the newspaper. Tom, I'm sorry to admit that many reporters give the profession a bad name. Frank, I believe many newspapers try to go for the sensational. They're looking for big headlines that really grab the reader's attention. Tom, and reporters like to see their stories on the front page. I'm really glad you noticed my story, even if it wasn't sensational. Frank, I'm with you on that. I don't think it was a sensational story, just good investigative reporting on a subject that's of interest to almost everyone. Tom, I think the bad things that people do get most of the attention in the news media. Frank, as long as we're on the subject, do you think reporters should include analysis and opinions in their news stories? Tom, that question is a biggie. Many people think that a reporter should just give the facts and nothing more. But I don't think it's possible to report on an issue without slanting it toward your personal beliefs, especially if you have strong feelings. Frank, many readers just want plain facts without reporters' opinions. Then they can make their own judgments on issues. Tom, I know what you mean. I guess it's good that newspapers have different viewpoints in their editorial pages. So this can be used to practice English for rehearsal, even in groups or as individuals, and also to learn basic introductory English, basic spelling, and basic grammar. Have a nice day.